have like 8 questions.
8?
So,
Okay. Try to get to them all. See.
okay.
Okay. See. Well, I guess I would say in general, of course, I'm most inspired by the Sakirasa pastimes of Krishna. And why? I would give the principal reason being that Prabhupada was idealized such, and that was is apparent from the book that we published entitled "Oh My Friend," and so as we know, bhakti is not a right of the jiva, but a gift and a blessing. And so the association that we have will influence our attraction to Krishna in any particular sentiment. So I'm very prominently influenced by Prabhupada from this life and previous lives as well. Excuse me, in that direction. And so that's why, I guess, in a broader sense. And then I think the questioner wants to know why perhaps a particular pastime. I'm speaking in general about the broader range of Sakirasa in general, in which there are unlimited pastimes. The Bhagavatam showcases that sentiment over a number of chapters that I have retold in my forthcoming book. But I've also made a contribution through the book that, I mean, that in itself is unique in one sense, but furthermore, I've described or explored the apricot day in a life of Krishna divided over 8 divisions from the vantage point not only of Sakirasa, but the Narmasaka's bhava, which is influenced by Madhurya. So that's certainly a unique contribution. And within that, all of that, if you will, I very much attracted to the point in Krishna Lila in which Krishna assembles with his friends after playing very hard, if you will. They assemble to sit down and have lunch in the forest, at which time, having finished the lunch, Krishna with the help of his Narmasaka friends, comes up with excuses for leaving the assembly, the greater assembly of devotees, and going to explore Vrindavan, to meet with an astrologer or whatever the excuse may be, which is meant to cover up the fact that he's going to meet with Radha at Radhakund, Shamakund pastimes in the midday. And so he takes some of his friends, Narmasakas, of course, that bhava goes with him. So I'm attracted to being invited along. At that time, Krishna puts the rest of the cowherds in the hands of Balaram. And of course, they reunite again then after the midday pastimes. So I find some traction there, that prospect of assisting Krishna in his romantic life from a friendly point of view, which then, of course, includes within it service to Radha as well. So that's the general idea. Hope that helps. What else? And why? I guess I should say why of that. Well, because if you want to be a friend of Krishna, then you want to be a friend with him in all respects. And he's very prominently influenced by romantic feelings, and those friends that can understand that aspect of himself, as well as all other aspects of himself with regard to fraternal love, that is arguably the fullest sense in which one can express and participate in a friendship with Krishna. Okay, sorry. Okay. Well, thank you for your patience, given that you asked the question a week ago, and I haven't gotten to it until now. But to take shelter, I think to say that in English is to speak about Sharanagati. Sharanagati means, I guess another English translation would be surrender. So what does it mean to surrender, to take shelter, to cultivate Sharanagati? This Sharanagati is an anga, or a limb of bhakti. It's very prominent in the Ramanuja Sampradaya. In the Ramanuja Sampradaya, which is a Vaidhi Marg Sampradaya, but obviously a Vaishnava Sampradaya, the general course, I'm not an expert on Ramanuja philosophy and practice, but as I understand it, the general course is that one proceeds through karma and gyan and comes to bhakti. A little different than our perspective, which includes a very generous nature of bhakti that comes to us despite the fact that we may not have gone through religious purification, dharma or karma marg, neither through introspection, gyan marg, to come to bhakti. Bhakti comes to us nonetheless, but in Ramanuja Sampradaya, the general course, as I say, is to pass through karma Gyan and come to bhakti. But then those that may not have the adhikar for that, they have the option of sharanagati. They just take shelter of Krishna. And so that's more similar to the way in which we speak about bhakti. Placing some, I would say that in our sampradaya, in our lineage in particular, the Bhakti Vinod Paribar, Bhakti Vinod has emphasized sharanagati as an anga of bhakti more than it's been emphasized and theologized about by previous acharyas. So he seems to have focused on that. He has several songs about sharanagati. He very much plays out the 6 divisions of sharanagati that involve accepting what's favorable for bhakti, rejecting what's unfavorable, 1. 2, thinking of Krishna as one's protector. 3, accepting Krishna as one's maintainer. Was that 3? 4, excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the 5th one is dainya, or humility, and atmanikshep, or atmanivedan, self-resignation, sometimes compared to the way in which an animal, like a cow, puts herself in the hands of the cow herder and moves along with him as he sees fit. So among these 6 divisions within Sharanagati, the centerfold, or the Swarup Lakshan, the primary characteristic of Sharanagati, is Gopritvevananam Tata, or accepting Krishna as one's maintainer. We see this played out in the Govardhan Leela in the Srimad Bhagavatam, where the cowherds, led by Nanda Maharaj, thought that in order for their maintenance, it was important for them to worship Indra, whereby they might be blessed with rain, which would then in turn produce good pasture for the cows, who were their livelihood. Krishna stepped in, of course, and said, rather than worship Indra, we should worship Govardhan Hill. And he gave his reasons and so forth. And then he showed himself to be non-different than the hill. And everyone took shelter of the hill, and more so of Krishna holding the hill. So this is the Leela in which the last verse of the Bhagavad Gita that speaks about taking shelter, about Sharanagati, one of the last verses, Sarvadharman Prityaja Mamekam Sharanam Raja. Sharana means to take shelter. Krishna says, take shelter of me alone, Sarvadharman Prityaja, and forget about all the gods in the Dharma Marg, in the Karma Marg, in the Varnashram. Don't take shelter of them for anything. Indeed, as I've explained earlier in the Gita, their power to bestow a blessing depends upon my blessing them. So take shelter of me alone. So this is Gopritve Baranam Tata, accepting Krishna as one's maintainer. So we see this illustrated, exemplified in the Leela, as I say, in the Govardhan Leela. Everyone took shelter of Krishna alone, and Indra had no power over them to bless or to cause havoc in their lives, as he tried to do. In that Leela, Krishna was crowned by Indra at the end as the god of gods, Govinda or Upendra, as different texts describe. So this is something about Sharanagati. In the broad sense, it means taking shelter of Krishna alone. And foregoing the the gods and goddesses of Varnashram and so forth. Not that we don't respect them, of course we do, but we see them in light, for example, of how they're described in the Brahma Samhita, which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, at the 5th chapter of Brahma Samhita, that he underscored and presented to his devotees upon returning from South India, saying the Siddhanta is all found here. What is that Siddhanta that's found there? Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. Stated how? Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami, the original person, Krishna. So that's the broad idea of Sharanagati. And of course, besides Krishna's my maintainer, Krishna's my protector, as I say. And there are leelas that correspond with this, accepting what's favorable for bhakti, rejecting what's unfavorable. That's a very important feature, because typically of Sharanagati, typically we accept something that's favorable to our senses and our mind as good, and that which is not pleasing to our mind and senses we accept as bad. But now we have a new criterion. Regardless of how it may feel to my senses or my mind, for example, it may feel good to my senses to sleep late in the morning, but it may be good for me in terms of bhakti to rise early. So now I have a new criterion of what is good or what is bad, what is favorable or what is unfavorable. It's not based on the dictates of my mind and senses, which foster the dualities of good, bad, happy, sad, and so on and so forth, all of which we want to rise above. So with this new criterion in the context of bhakti, in the pursuit of Sharanagati, we have a new good and a new bad. If it pleases Krishna, if it's good for bhakti, it's good. If it's not favorable for bhakti, it's bad. So I will reject it. So very quickly, if one really, really puts this in practice, one rises above the dualities that, as Krishna says in the Gita, arise from sense perception and the mind. So this Sharanagati then is something that we cultivate in sadhana bhakti. It's the focus of sadhana bhakti. Sharanagati, or taking shelter, is the external expression of Shraddha, faith, which the seed of which gives us the eligibility to tread the path of bhakti in the first place. So our faith is externally manifest as Sharanagati. So we should be aware of the angas of Sharanagati and try to cultivate them. And when one attains the stage within sadhana bhakti of ruchi, we can say that the Sharanagati has been established. Here in other places I've compared this to a dramatic stage on which the Leela will be performed, coming soon. So once a Sharanagata, in the full sense of the term, and one's attachment, therefore, is only for bhakti, not for anything worldly, then shortly thereafter, that will develop into attachment to the object of one's bhakti, a particular manifestation of Krishna corresponding with one's liking in Sakya or Madhurya and so forth. And then one enters into Bhava Bhakti, which is where the drama is taking place and one's participating in it. So Sharanagati, Shraddha and Sharanagati, these are the focus in one sense within the stage of sadhana bhakti. And Sharanagati to the Guru, Guru Bhakti is an anga of Krishna Bhakti. So we're encouraged at the onset of Rupa Goswami's description of sadhana bhakti to take shelter of the Guru. That means that we accept the Guru as our guide with regard to what is the teaching, what is the philosophy, what is the theology. We learn about that from him or from her, and we expect him or her to set an inspiring example as they do, and thus, we come under their inspired, come under their his or her guidance. So from the guru, we learn the teachings. We see how to apply them, and so forth. Many of us don't live with the guru, in which case, if you did, Sharanagati might take a certain shape that's express itself a little different than if you don't live with the guru. Because if you're living with the guru in his or her ashram, well, then Sharanagati is going to affect more everything that you do, so to speak, in a more direct sense. If you're living as a householder outside of the ashram, then, for example, you have things to do. You have to work, you have to have a livelihood, you have to raise the children, and so on and so forth, all of which would not be going on in an ashram. Those things can be included within bhakti by the culture of the appropriate culture of devotional service, seeing them in that light, and so on and so forth. But Guru Bhakti will take a slightly different shape there in that situation than it will, for example, living as a monk in the ashram. But doesn't mean that as a householder, one can't make as much progress. One certainly can, just that it plays itself out a little differently. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, taking shelter of the guru doesn't mean to say what kind of job should I get, what kind of how should I buy. You could ask him if you have that kind of relationship, but it's not the kind of uncommon knowledge that we go to the guru for. There's other ways to figure some of those things out. There are some things we can't figure out, and we go to the guru to hear those things, which are found in Shastra, in which he draws from there in a dynamic way according to the time and circumstance, and presents them, such teachings. Nitai then is, of course, one of the two manifestations of what we call the Samasti Guru, the macrocosmic manifestation, him and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of Guru for the Sampradaya. And then so many gurus come from their influence, who are the microscopic gurus for ourselves in our particular lineage, and so forth. He brought Sakya Rasa to the world, and in some respects, he gave Madhurya Rasa to the world by giving the world Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before anybody else did. Before there were books written by the Goswamis and so forth, he pushed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu forward. And when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught to chant Krishna Nam, he said, no, you should chant Gaur Nam, and so forth. So as far as distribution of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's dispensation, there's no one more significant than Nityananda Prabhu. Other associates excel in other ways in terms of all that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was about, but this is the way in which Nityananda Prabhu excels. And of course, he is steeped in Sakya Rasa, being not different from Balaram himself. So many devotees who take shelter of Nitai, they have an affinity for Sakya Rasa. That doesn't mean that devotees in Madhurya Rasa don't take shelter of Nitai. They do, but the way in which they do will be a little bit different. And Narottam Das Thakur, of course, who is steeped in Manjari Bhav, he is not shy to emphasize the importance of Nityananda Prabhu, and taking shelter of him to attain any possible entrance into the Braj Rasa. So he's a gateway in a sense. He's very kind, very accommodating. He's kind of the magnanimity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu extended to deal with persons and circumstances that Mahaprabhu could not directly come in touch with and enter into, given his status as a sannyasi, which was a bit of a, which was taken by him, accepted by him to facilitate distribution, but still had its limitations. He couldn't go to certain areas without being suspect of participating in what goes on in those areas, which would be adharmic. But through Nityananda Prabhu, he did. So his generosity is Mahaprabhu's generosity, magnanimity is, in a sense, further extended through his other self of Nityananda Prabhu. So he's very kind, very generous. So it's intelligent then, if you want to take shelter of and take advantage of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disposition, take shelter of Nitai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly pointed out to his devotees the importance, the significance of Nityananda Prabhu, so that they would not misunderstand him. So all the devotees, whether they're in Madhurya Rasa or in Sakya Rasa, they take shelter of Nityananda Prabhu. Of course, if you're in the Gadadhar Paribar, then Gadadhar will be more prominent for you. If you're in the Dvaita Paribar, the Advaita will be more prominent. For us in the Bhakti Vinod Paribar, Bhakti Vinod comes through the Nityananda Paribar. And so here we find in our Paribar very wide participation in wide circulation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, as my Guru Maharaj's mission was so much characterized by. So regardless of whether it be in general, the Guru, Nityananda Prabhu, the principle of Sharanagati applies. So I hope that answered your question, helps you to understand the notion, the anga of
Yes,
Sharanagati.
thank you.
Okay, Mahapriya, Tasi? Again?
Yes, yes, thank you,
Okay, gracias
Maharaj.
por su pregunta. Is that correct?
Gracias.
Yes. Okay. And I'm seeing a nice picture of Tulsi Maharani on my screen. Tulsi Maharani, some devotee seems to have a very nice standard of Tulsi worship. Very commendable. Must be in that good weather of Latin America. Warm weather. Mm-hmm. Well, Vedanta-sutra is a basic book. It's not a book that's advanced in terms of very esoteric theological discourse on the emotional life of Krishna or Bhakti Rasa. For example, a book like Krishna Karnamrita, that would be an advanced book. Vedanta Sutra is a more more basic book, basically, more basic book that seeks to show how the Upanishads and the greater body of the Vedic literature are making a concerted point. And there are different commentaries on the Vedanta-sutra, which then say this is the concerted point that the Vedic revelation is making, or this or that is, and so forth. In our line, the commentary that is the Godia commentary comes from Baladev Vijayabhusana. And that commentary has been translated into English by a couple of people. The older translation that's been around for many years is by a scholar, an Indian scholar, I forget his name. More recently, a godbrother of mine named Swami translated the Govinda-bhasha, the commentary of Baladev, into English. And that is more readily available, and it's in better English and a better format than the previous one. What you are referring to is, I think, some early writing of Prabhupada, where he started to write about Vedanta-sutra, but he never completed it. He didn't get very far with it. But some of the writing that he did on it, I remember seeing. Maybe it was published in early articles of Back to Godhead. So some of his disciples may have put that together in some form, and it's certainly readable, something worth reading. But if you want to study the Vedanta Sutra, which is, I guess it's intellectually a little bit challenging, high in that sense, not from a rasic point of view, then I would recommend maybe the translation by Swami of Govinda-bhasha. Next question.
Mahaprabhu, you want to unmute?
I should mention, of course, with regard to Vedanta Sutra and the Govinda-bhasha, that as Baladev himself mentions, coming from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prior to him, Srimad-bhagavatam is a natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutras. So nothing is lost by studying Srimad-bhagavatam. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, Archana.
Yeah, Mahaprabhu? Prabhu?
Yes, I'm here. Dandavat Maharaj, devotees. My question is on physiology somehow. What I mean is that my occupation is very taxing on the mental, on the brain, on the nervous system. And since one accident a few years ago, my capacity to concentrate and think, let's say, was a little bit damaged. So now, if these two combining, sometimes I am getting to some state of brain tiredness, which it's not. I cannot engage, let's say, in activities that require a lot of focus. So it's hard for me to read in these periods. Sometimes chant. Only listening to classes is somehow goes through the barrier. So I was thinking, instead of going with the flow and engaging in easy material activities that do not require mental strength at this time, and just waiting things to pass, are there some Krishna conscious things that one can engage in that are not so, that do not require so much clarity of mind or ability to concentrate at this particular moment? So
Well,
my question is,
did you say you're having trouble listening to lectures also?
no, this is the most easy for, especially when I walk outside and I listen. This.
So they'll do that. Listen to lectures. That's good. That may be better than reading. And chanting, obviously, is easy. Deity worship, maybe, requires a little concentration, but not in the same way of trying to understand reasoning and so on and so forth. Those are all positive things you can do. Negative things that you could do is you can stay off of social media, fast from social media for a month. Let's try that. That because that's very distracting. It fosters a very scattered kind of mind and so forth. And there may be some brain food that you could take also. There are things that herbs and whatnot that are good for the brain. So there's some thoughts.
Thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Hope you get better soon.
It's reached some level of
Leveling off.
It is as good as it will get, I guess.
Okay.
Tadas. There he is.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so my question would be about the instructions of Krishna given by himself. Because I have some kind of, thought in my mind that which is regarding, everything that I have read or heard, that when Krishna speaks himself, he basically gives instruction, in general. Like he says, in general, think about me, or like do some kind of service to me. But it's more in like general way. And my question would be if it is somewhere instructions given by him that you should like meditate on him playing on flute, or running in Vrindavan forests, or not, because as far as I understand, these instructions they're being given by the devotees of Krishna, but not directly by him. Or maybe I'm mistaken. Thank you.
Well, Krishna's general instructions apply to a broader range of devotees. There are many different types of devotees. Some devotees worship Krishna, conceiving of him as an avatar of Vishnu, with a goal to attain Vaikuntha and Dasarasa for Narayan. So they can also read the Bhagavad Gita, and the nature of Krishna's instructions there being broad, as you're pointing out, apply to them as well as they do to Gaudiya Vaishnavas, who look at Krishna as the source of Narayan, and they don't want to go to Vaikuntha in Dasya Bhakti. They want to enter into the Brajalila in Madhurya Rasa or in Sakirasa. So it's understandable then, because Krishna has many devotees, a wide range, that his instructions may be a little more general. Whereas the devotees of Krishna, relative to their particular bhava, sentiment, and conceptualization of him, they will give specifics. So in Bhakti Sandarbha, for example, you find a dhyan, a visualization, a meditation to accompany the chanting of the Gopal mantra, in which Krishna is thought to be meditated upon, sitting beneath a desired tree, surrounded by his associates, and so forth. You have visions. Krishna says, "Think of me." And then you have Divyat Brindaranya Kalpadumadha Srimadat Naga Simhamsam. So Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prastalibi Sevyamano Smarami from Krishnadas Kaviraj Swami, which is giving specifics, right, that you're talking about, how to look at him, how to think of him. So that's understandable, as I say, that will come from the devotees of Krishna, who all of whom are following the general instruction, think of me, but they think of me, surrender to me, pay obeisances to me, sing my name, so forth. So how to do that exactly? Yes, that will be done differently by different devotees and different sampradayas and different lineages with different ideals and different conceptions of Krishna. To hear from a devotee is not less than hearing from Krishna. The more comes from the devotee. And Krishna will go, yeah, listen to him to get the details. Mahaprabhu told, to give an example, Raghunath Das Goswami, don't just chase your tongue when eating and be dress all like a in vain, be all concerned about how your appearance. Don't associate with worldly people. Don't engage in frivolous talks. And in your mind, think always of Radha and Krishna. And with regard to that, get the details from Swarup Damodar, he said. Raghunath Das Goswami wanted to get instructions directly from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It was finally, after several attempts, that Mahaprabhu acquiesced and gave him that instruction. Still in that instruction, he said, get the details from Swarup Damodar. And prior to giving that instruction, on the previous occasions, when Raghunath submitted a petition to Swarup Damodar, may I get some instructions directly from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu replied, don't ask me, ask Swarup Damodar, he knows more than me. So, hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Am I coming through the right channel? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Great. My question has to do with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and the Anga of Bhakti serving the Vaishnavas. And I'm just curious to know a little more about, I feel like I know someone whose main Anga might be kind of like being a friend of the Vaishnavas. And I'm just wondering also just how far, in that section, there's that verse that says that all the Angas of Bhakti described in relation to the Lord are also Angas in relation to the devotees of the Lord. This is the conclusion of the wise. Basically, what do you think of this section, serving the Vaishnavas? It seems like Rupa Goswami is saying that serving the Vaishnavas is more effective than serving the Lord. And then that, I don't know.
Well, vaishnava-seva is an anga of Krishna-bhakti. So serving the devotees is a particular expression of Krishna-bhakti, and it's obviously devotees are very dear to Krishna. So serving that which is dear to Krishna is sometimes thought to be more important than serving Krishna. And certainly service of the devotees is more readily available to us, especially in the stage of sadhana, than is direct service to Krishna. So those are some ways in which we may think about vaishnava-seva. And I think that as much as the opportunity arises, we take great pleasure in that. We had some Vaishnavas visit us yesterday from ISKCON facility in Silicon Valley that who's been one of our main clients in our dairy, commercial dairy. Because we're ending that, some devotees from there came here to see how we run the dairy and so on and so forth, because they're going to try to set up a dairy south of San Francisco. So we had the opportunity to serve them prasadam, and share with them and so forth the knowledge of how we run a micro dairy. So it was a great opportunity. Householders, typically they have the opportunity to host Vaishnavas and serve them then in that capacity. I don't know exactly what you're looking for an answer. Obviously, it's important. It's you can make it your focus. It's very practical, easier to do than to serve Krishna, so to speak. And through that, you will certainly endear yourself to Krishna. So I agree with Rupa Goswami. Vaishnava-seva ki jai. What else?
Kushangi.
Guru Maharaj, I've been reading the Caitanya-bhagavata, and in the beginning of the book, there's a section describing Mahaprabhu's relationship with his mother, and there was a mention of an incident when he asked his mother to bring him a garland for worshipping Ganga Devi. And when Saci Mata didn't have a garland ready, but said that she would make one and bring in a moment, Mahaprabhu became very angry at his mother and in a rage destroyed a lot of property. And I was wondering how we should understand this. And I was thinking of how it's said that when the guru is angry at their student, that can be a certain form of love, that it should be understood as special mercy. Like, could that be a way of approaching this, or how would you?
Well, I wouldn't think of it like that. I think that if the guru chastises the disciple, then it's thought that, well, the guru must care about her to take the time to chastise her and instruct her. Obviously, it's more apparent that the guru cares about the disciple if he blesses her and acknowledges her service. But in between those two, criticizing constructively the disciple or praising her is indifference to how the disciple is conducting herself. That we want to avoid. We don't want the guru to be indifferent and think, oh, she can't be reformed. What can be done? So when Prabhupada on one occasion was chastised by his guru in public, then he very much appreciated that and thought, oh, Gurudev really cares about me to criticize me in public. And in that case, Prabhupada wasn't even doing something wrong, but it looked like he was. Someone else was trying to talk to him while Bhaktisiddhanta was talking, and he was not trying to listen, but it looked like he was trying to listen. So Bhaktisiddhanta said, why are you doing this? Are you prepared to sit here and talk? Then you should listen. So Prabhupada was very pleased with that. But that's what you're talking about. And I don't think the instance which you're referring to in Caitanya-bhagavata is comparable. But what's going on there is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mad. He's so possessed of bhava, to worship, that he couldn't, he was unreasonable. And so Saci just had to step back, and then he ruined the house, and so on and so forth. So this kind of madness of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu early in his life would show up at times, and the parents and elders didn't know, what to think of it. Most elders thought, oh, how unfortunate it was Saci had a crazy son. But as it turned out, looking at it from the broader perspective, we can see that, these are early extraordinary manifestations of his bhava that would later express itself through his Vaishnavism directly in his teaching and so on and so forth. So I think that that's the way in which those incidences, there are a couple of them, and he I think he ruins the house, breaks all the pots and everything, and then he shows up with some gold later on out of nowhere to pay for everything. So just to be attributed to the power of bhava in him to cause him to act in ways that are unconventional, difficult to understand, and so forth. Therefore, it's said in Bhakti-rasa-amrita Sindhu that sometimes someone in bhava may act in ways that are unconventional or questionable, but if it's determined that they've attained bhava, then those things are not to be taken seriously. So I would look at it like that. So be careful, because the bhava may make you politically incorrect. Who knows what it may do. What else?
Gurumuch, I had a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
Is it possible that Mahaprabhu's lila is actually paralleling the Krishna's lila of when Yashoda put him down? So I think, because didn't Krishna break all the pots and steal the butter in the house or something like that?
Well, yeah, I don't think that that Vrindavana Thakur makes that connection there per se, but it's insightful on your part to think of it along those lines. Certainly, Krishna in his childhood was mischievous, and his behavior was otherwise inappropriate, and so we do find some measure of that in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu prior to his becoming a Vaishnava and so forth. So it is in a broader sense, I think, appropriate to make that connection. Thank you.
There's a devotee who has their hand up. Naul, did you want to ask something? You need to unmute.
Sí, muchas gracias, reverencias. Hare Krishna.
We're not hearing
Hare
you.
Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, Madre.
Hare Krishna. We don't hear you.
Sí, te escucho. Te escucho. ¿Vos me escuchás a mí, Prabhu?
Okay.
Bien, me gustaría mejorar mi servicio, pero también me gustaría ir bien de la mano, o sea, con mi familia. Tengo un bebé de 1 año, un poco más, y bueno, mi señora, y a veces me cuesta hacer bien el servicio, con el trabajo, con la familia, con todo. Me gustaría algún consejo como para poder mejorar mi servicio, poder hacer más rondas, y eso. Esa es mi pregunta, cómo poder mejorar mi servicio. Muchas gracias.
Well, what you're saying is you have some opportunities for direct service, like chanting japa and so forth, but it's limited by other factors in your life, household life, which involves going to work and taking care of the children, and so on and so forth. So how can you increase your service given those circumstances? Well, one answer is that what time you do have to directly engage in angas of bhakti, you try to improve the quality of that. So it's not a question necessarily of quantity, but quality. And if you take your time for chanting and make it something that's very strict. At this time I chant, I can't be disturbed by anything else. Close the door. Sorry that I've got a half an hour for this, or an hour, whatever it is, and concentrate. That's a way that you can increase your service. And then in the broader sense, of course, you have to try to see your family as an extension of your emotional needs, without which you would be less capable of applying yourself in devotional service, because they would be gnawing on you, drawing on you, and so forth. So you have a wife, you have children, it fulfills certain emotional needs which make you more whole as a person. which you wouldn't be if you were living in an ashram and having those desires and so forth. You would be distracted there. So you don't live in an ashram because you have desires that aren't suitable for that situation. So bhakti is very powerful and very generous that she can follow you into a household where you can make a quasi ashram, so to speak, of your own, and you see your wife and your children as other devotees who are worshipable by you and who are something that you, persons that you need in your life in order to feel whole enough emotionally to focus with what time you do have on bhakti. And so when you think of them like that, you don't see them as something separate entirely from bhakti. Bhakti has the power to, unlike gyan or yoga, to be effective in household life. So there are some aspects of household life that one can participate in that aren't going to be, that don't have to necessarily be a distraction if they're done properly. And one of the ways to do that is to think about them along the lines of which I'm speaking about it. But it's easier said than done. But you try it. I mean, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had 10 children. He had 12, I think 10, 2 passed away and early. He had 10 that he raised. And so, and 2 of them became prominent devotees, one of them in particular, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So he's a good example, a patron. You pray to Bhaktivinoda Thakur for inspiration in that situation, such that your ordinary, if you will, activities don't become a distraction, but they're seen in light of what you're doing as a sadhaka and as playing an assisting role in your life. So if I see, here comes my wife, without her, I wouldn't be able to practice devotional service. I'd be looking for a wife and distracted. So she solved that problem for me. She's so kind. I pay my obeisances to her. It's a conceptual orientation that I'm speaking about that enables you to take all of these otherwise material things, distractions, and include them within conceptually what you're doing as a sadhaka. So try that. Does that help? It's an earful, but...
Sí, Prabhu, muchísimas gracias por su respuesta y por su tiempo. Hare Krishna, muchas gracias.
Okay,
muchas gracias al traductor también.
So that's all the time we have for today. I appreciate everybody.
9 questions you did.
Pardon me, 9?
9, yeah.
Okay, good.
job.
Sorry.
So much for all those beautiful answers, so balanced and applicable to our everyday life. And thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll see you on Saturday. Everybody stay on. I have a couple of announcements to make about the coming programs. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Okay, so I think the devotees, hopefully everyone knows that now during the week we have classes every day, 11:30 Eastern Daylight Savings Time. I do notice that some people are still getting on the wrong call. They're getting on the Swami call rather than Padmanabha Swami's call. So if you're doing that, hopefully you figured it out and entered it. And so just quickly what those classes are: on Mondays, Padmanabha Swami, Vaishnava Etiquette. Tuesday, Ashram Swami, Sharanagati, the Path of Surrender. Wednesday, Dulal Chandra, Krishna Sandarbha. Thursdays, Padmanabha Swami, Vaishnava Etiquette. Fridays, Brigupad Das, the Mano Shiksha, Instructions to the Mind. And then this Saturday, we'll be having a special class. It is our Guru Maharaj's appearance day. So he'll be giving a talk on that day at 11:30. So hopefully everyone will be able to join us for that. And then on Sunday, instead of questions and answers, it is Gaur Purnima. So we will be having another class discussion by our Guru Maharaj during that time on Sunday. So hopefully you'll all be able to join us, and thank you so much for your participation. As always, that's half of the equation, or more than half of the equation, right? And the questions, really nice questions and really nice answers. Okay, so we'll see everybody soon, I hope, again. And Hare Krishna, Jai.
Jai.